Perfect. Well, welcome everyone to another workshop from the San Diego, the Brink SBDC. I'm going backwards. So the Brink SBDC workshops that entail wonderful tips and resources and education and awareness for entrepreneurs to really launch and scale their businesses from really early stage to actually investor ready to actually scale. So this is right here in this aspect of making sure that entrepreneurs are ready for investors. We are in the middle of San Diego Angel Conference, and we'll kind of like not in the middle, about 3/4 of the way through. And we're almost here for the San Diego Angel Conference Fund 6 finale event. And I'm here to work through any networking tips that I can partake to you and make sure that you are really set up for success. Amy, do you want to say anything as a director of the Brink before we start?
Sure. So thanks everyone for coming out for our workshop. We appreciate you. We are here to help you. The Brink SBDC is part of the greater San Diego SBDC network. And so if you're not a client, I will put a link into the chat where you can register for free one-on-one advising and also a link to the events. But you found this one, so thanks for coming.
Wonderful. Amy is such a great resource and such a leader for all of us to be able to learn from, and she gives us the opportunities to learn and grow with you. So I'm an advisor at the Brink SBDC, and there is a network of advisors that can support your entrepreneurial ventures. So without further ado, I'm going to start the slideshow. I'm going to share my screen really quick. And this is meant to not just go through tips, because I think that I can probably, that the tips go pretty quick, but I want to give you a little bit of the background of why certain things are important when you're looking at networking and relationship building with investors. So a little bit of awareness is that the understanding of the ethos of angel investors, right? At SDAC, we get to yes. So in something like this, like an event, a networking event, a lot of the investors want to get to that yes. It might be a yes, I can introduce you to somebody else. Yes, I would like to invest in you. Yes, I would like to bring you in to another fund or another angel group that I'm involved with. So not just get to yes in the actual big check that we give out at the end of the time that we have for Fund 6, but we get to yes in multiple different ways. And we'll go through what are these multiple different ways that investors get to yes. Most investors want a return on investment and a return on impact. So when you're networking, you want to really think about those two pieces. How can I talk about my return on investment to this entrepreneur, to this investor? And how can I talk about a little bit about my return on impact to that investor? Want to also say trust is the most valuable currency in angel investing. Is not truly the dollars and cents. It's what's that trust is being relayed between investor and entrepreneur. Wanted you to also have the awareness that the angel investment asset class is the highest, riskiest asset class in their entire wealth portfolio typically. So when you're thinking about asking them, hey, can you invest in me? You're asking them, can you invest in the most riskiest thing that you can possibly imagine investing in? That's a little bit of a proposition, right? It's not just stocks. It's not just like real estate. It's something that they will carve out a little bit of their wealth portfolio. It's about 10% of a typical wealth portfolio of an investor to invest in startups. So having that awareness thing, it's not their entire wealth portfolio, but part of it is super important. And most angel investors do this on weekends, nights, and early mornings. And having that awareness too knows that like when you are networking and you want to have a follow-up with them, know that they're going to maybe get back to you in a week because they do maybe have a full-time job or another contract or a consultancy gig that they're doing. So know that they will get back to you. The best thing is to network in person, like you are going to do it at the San Diego Angel Conference, and then networking with them over LinkedIn. And most of them are servant leaders. So they care about impact, they care about serving, they care about sharing, caring, resources that they want to share with you. So understanding that awareness of where that angel investor comes from, you will approach networking in a different way. it's not transactional, it's relational because of these things. We'll kind of dive into all of these in the next hour, and feel free to ask questions and stuff like that. I'm checking the chat all the time. So with that, I wanted to also let you know, is like benefits of angel investing in general that we teach angel investors is that that there's monetization of their expertise. There's startup experience that they can get out of it. They want to see the latest trends. That's why they want to be part of angel investing. Huge potential returns, obviously the return on investment, network opportunities, access to entrepreneurial community, professional variety, and asset diversification. So understanding what the benefits of an angel investor actually activating their capital and investing in you as an entrepreneur allows you to set the stage of how do I approach that investor in that networking hour or the networking day that you have. Is it that they are really like loving this experience and you want to be more storyteller? Then do that. Ask them why they're doing angel investing so that then you can really say, oh, they're seeking the latest trends. Then you can say, oh, well, look, our industry is growing by 22% compounded annual growth rate. And the things that we're seeing as trends in AI or something like that, they're like, oh, hook, right? They're gonna be like, oh, I love what you're talking about. So understanding what is the key benefit for that angel investor as you're talking to them is super, super important. And you can actually use this framework to say, oh, they're number 1 and number 4, or they're like monetizing and returns, or they're professional variety and networking. So know where they fit in. Next up is just giving you like a quote from this Cecilia, who is an angel investor. It says, I love this quote because it kind of allows you to understand how she's envisioning why she's an angel investor and why she's networking with entrepreneurs. I've always felt that entrepreneurship is the future of our economy. I think that people have the potential that make really transformative, substantive changes to how we do things. To be on the ground floor of something new, that's exciting. You see how that is, she's not saying, I want a return. Obviously, yes, right? There's a potential to make a really transformative impact, and there's a future of our economy, but she's doing it for so much more. Tap into why they're doing what they're doing as you're networking with them. One of the things that I always kind of talk about is for entrepreneurs to create their investor personas. And I'll go through how to create that, because that allows you to come into this networking hour or networking day that you have at San Diego Angel Conference to say, okay, who is the person that I want to have on my cap table? That means capitalization table, so that I know that they are aligned to how I want my investors to line up for me and how I'm building my investor network. So I just wanted to ask everybody, and you can answer in the chat, do you invest on the horse, the idea, or the business, or the jockey? Can we get some chat in there? Which one do you think? Great job, John. Both. Joshua, jockey. Thank you. Jockey, jockey, jockey. Yes. Jockey. Yes. Wonderful. Well, thank you everybody for responding in the chat. We had a lot of jockeys and one said both. Definitely is that you invest in the jockey, right? I want to go into the both comment as well. So the jockey is that founder who's like larger than life, who's completely visionary, who has also a path to commercialization. They have a path to monetization or commercialization. They are building the team. People are coming around them because they believe in this founder. Investors are coming alongside that entrepreneur, and they can make that happen, right? So, but I love how somebody, that's John, said both. And I believe that as well. Typically, it's mostly the jockey or the team and the bench strength that they have with their advisors and their larger team. But I love that you said both, because a great jockey with a horrible idea is not going to go anywhere. They're just going to be like, oh, and this horse is not going, right? So there needs to be momentum. There needs to be drive. There needs to be like that idea that makes sense for the customers that they're going after. It needs to solve a problem. Yes, John, that is completely what we need to look at, but that jockey is what that interaction is. So that's why networking is super important with investors, to showcase who you are, but also your team that you've been able to amass and convince to be part of your startup. So this is a typical investor persona framework that I love to work with entrepreneurs. And it's typical if you've ever seen, let's say, a customer persona. It's the same thing, right? So if you have that template, you have it already, but you're really trying to think about which investors are values aligned to your company, who do you want to invest in your company, and who would you want to have talk about you to others, right? And especially in a networking scenario, you want to be able to have, okay, some investors that you are kind of targeting and have them talk to other investors about you. That's very, very important. So this is one way of building it out. So the name of investor or investor group is at the top left, then relevant event behaviors, needs and goals, relative motivations, demographics, and industries, and then of course, other notes. At the very top, obviously, you're going to put their investor group or that investor that you want to get on your cap table. And on the far right, you'll see that it says check size, portfolio size, and stage. You want to know, like, are they writing typically $5,000 checks, 10,000 checks, or 25, 500K, or $1 million checks? That's very different. And you're going to come right in the middle of that opportunity and be able to really see eye to eye with them and be able to, for them to say yes faster. The portfolio size is also important. So personally, myself, I have 160 companies in my portfolio. I have about 80-ish of them that I've personally invested in, and the rest of them actually I've invested through funds like San Diego Angel Conference or Next Wave Impact Fund or other funds. I count them as my portfolio because I do a lot of work side by side with those entrepreneurs, even if they are part of a fund. And what stage does that investor like to invest in? So let's say for me, I like to typically invest in seed stage companies, and San Diego Angel Conference investors typically are pre-seed to seed. So you're right in that good range if you're aligning yourself to that at the SDAC event that we're talking about. The relevant behaviors are important because you want to make sure that, and we've kind of already talked about this, is why are they doing what they're doing? Are they socially conscious? Do they prefer impact investing? Do they prefer technology? Do they prefer deep tech, AI? What do they prefer, and why are they doing it? Those behaviors are super, super important. The needs and the goals of the investor is also important. So why are they doing what they're doing, right? Do they want to increase their wealth? Do they want to empower founders? Do they care really deeply about the founders, the jockey instead of the horse? All of those things are the things that you can add into that. Relative motivations is I separate that into incentive, achievement, and power. So is there an incentive that they're motivated by? Is it achievement of getting a certain number of companies in their portfolio, or is it power? They want to have power in their network. Power does not have to be a negative thing. It can be a really positive thing. So those are the kind of the motivations that you want to inherently understand from that investor. And then demographics and psychographics are that, maybe you only want, your investor persona, the one you really want is a San Diego person, because you're really selling to all of the companies in San Diego, and you want to grow your investor, cap table based on San Diego investors. That's fine. Psychographics is, what do they like to eat? Do they like to eat, typically in fast food restaurants? Probably not. Or like in different types of restaurants, or do they like to travel? What is it that they like to do? And one of the last things is industries. Know, like, if they are really interested in your industry, and then that is very important to you, then you want to add that in here. Now, this allows you to have a great snapshot of what that investor needs to look like for you to actually interact with them. So that helps you be very targeted and very focused on the networking piece. So one of the biggest tips is be as focused as possible in your networking efforts. And this is one way to get yourself ready for that networking event, to be able to be more structured and focused on the type of investor that you want to see and want to interact with. Now, I get a lot of questions with this template is, how do I learn all these things about an investor? Well, the easiest way is to look at their LinkedIn profiles and see, what do they post? How often do they post? Do they have a website that gives you their portfolio? Is it that they talk about their portfolio companies? You can kind of create some sort of piece of information about that investor. I say it this way, and also on Twitter and on Instagram, because typically angel investors, not the VCs of the world, angel investors that we're really focused on San Diego Angel Conference, is that they're not really having websites and having something on Crunchbase, and they don't usually have like something completely built out, but they are consistently talking about their network because they want to have the best entrepreneurs and the best companies to come to them so that they can build a better portfolio, right? So if they're saying, hey, I'm out there, I'm connecting with people, I love this type of entrepreneur, they're going to attract the right entrepreneurs for their growth of their investment portfolio. So you see how it just works both ways. So tap into that, go into LinkedIn and figure that out. I always like to add a picture on the top right of who you really love to have as an investor. Put it out there. Put what you dream of, so that you can really, whenever you're talking about, oh, we would love to have this investor, you can call that investor Mary, or you can call that investor John, whatever you want, and talk to them about. Or there's a certain one that you're really always looking for, you want to name them so that it's an easier way to recall what they're interested in and what they like to see. So after you do that, I usually say, look, try to have an investor persona action plan that you say, okay, who are the types of people that fit these characteristics? What could these people help with it within my company? How can I get introduced to them? And a score, I like to score them just so it's like based on the alignment and investor persona. And if you actually know them, right? Tier 1, 2, and 3 as connections on LinkedIn. So I gave you just an example of Benton Moore. He is one of our investors at San Diego Angel Conference, and he's been very active over the years. It's very easy to find out what he's actually interested in. He's part of New Fund and Interlock Capital. So what could these people help within my companies? Invest, advise, introductions to partners, network to customers. How could I get introduced is a network, warm intro, or e-track for a San Diego Angel Conference, or actually attending the event that we're talking about today. And then the score is based on alignment to persona. It's like, okay, he fits at a 9 out of 10 of an alignment to my investor persona as an entrepreneur. And usually, if you're part of the system, you're about one connection to him. You're first connected or second connected. And if you're second connected, you actually know exactly what you need to do. You need to ask Amy or myself saying, hey, can you introduce me to Benton Moore? Because he's actually a second connection, and I would like for him to be first connection so I can ask him questions and get connected. So this is a very easy way to have some actionable things that you can do that you are prepared for that event coming up in a couple of weeks. So I want to step a piece up into the ecosystem and pipeline of how you get those investors, and why it's important to network, because networking is part of the entire ecosystem and building that out. So the process is that letting you know, this is a little bit of awareness as well, is that the whole funnel is that you have to really send, not that you only have to do an initial email, but about 100 emails to get to, let's say 5 wires, 5 invest wires sent to you to invest in your company. So this is how this is mitigated and brought into the realm of investors. So you usually have an email, you apply of some sort, you meet investors about a screening, you present to investors. Right now, San Diego Angel Conference is in this stage right here, due diligence. We are due diligencing our last 5 finalists. And we are the investment committee is basically that last event that we're going to be at, and they're going to make the decision that day. And then the fund manager is the one who closes out, does all the legal, the legal aspects, and closes and wires the funds. Then it's like understanding that post-investment is equally as important as pre-investment. And all of this is part of that networking plan. You want to network in person, you want to network on LinkedIn, you want to send emails, you want to stay connected, you want to have an investor list of people that you're consistently curating and shepherding and letting them know that you are alive and well, and that you are fundraising or not fundraising where you are in the development of your startup. The typical timeline for investing, so that you know, is that it is about, about a month to 3 to 6 months. And the likelihood of closing is far out. You have an invite to coffee, news update, meet an event, which would be San Diego Angel Conference, and all of these elements. This is coming from Founders Institute. So just kind of giving you that awareness of the typical timeline for investing. That's just the same sort of thing. Now going back to networks. So the ecosystem is super important. Understanding that you as an entrepreneur are at the very middle of this ecosystem, and all of these things are around you, right? So that ecosystem, as you're networking, you want to make sure that you're saying, okay, I'm going to meet some investors. I might need some relational capital. I might need some service providers, and I'm building this network around me and this ecosystem around me as I'm networking, as I'm growing, as I'm launching, as I'm scaling. So let's just go through it like this. So entrepreneurs in the middle, and then you have human capital at the top. You can think about that as advisors, accelerators, entrepreneurs in residence, anybody who is the human capital, the resources, the education, the awareness. Those are important people to be a part of your ecosystem. Relational capital is more partners and strategic capital, early adopters that are customers. That relational capital is super important to be able to build and grow. Next is technology. Sometimes you are a business founder and you need technology. You don't need a technical co-founder to be able to build something that you're like super jazzed about. Really reach out to universities and research institutions so that you can get that technology to the forefront. Then you have service providers like lawyers and accountants and marketers that allow you to really scale what you're trying to do. And then you have influencers, you have media and movers and shakers that are part of your ecosystem. Tap into them, meet them at events like San Diego Angel Conference to be able to grow that aspect of your ecosystem. And then, of course, financial capital is just one section of this entire ecosystem. The reason why I put it here before I go into like the ABCs of the networking tips is because this is important for you to understand this entire ecosystem and how that hub and spoke model should be in your head. Is I'm trying to fill all of these pieces as I'm networking, as I'm being active in events and active in community events and networking events and investor events, all of these things, and meeting with advisors at the Brink. All of that makes sure that you're filling all of these buckets of your ecosystem so that you are thriving. Next up is, as I said, the ABCs of networking. I didn't want to say this up front. I wanted to really set the stage so that there's a why behind all of these ABCs of networking. I grabbed this from multiple different arenas, but I thought it was really nice to have like a really easy way to track the ABCs. So number one is take action with a positive attitude, right? Action is really important when you're networking. You want to be able to say, okay, I'm going to connect with this person. I'm going to follow up with them. I'm going to be positive about everything. If I'm at San Diego Angel Conference, I should know a little bit about the actual event. I should be positive about the entire San Diego ecosystem and how we are all building this together. That's a really great way of taking that A off, B is belong to groups, build your brand. So you're already belonging to a group, which is right now you're at the Brink SBDC. We are coming alongside entrepreneurs to build more resources, more opportunities for you. So belong with us, right? We give you belonging to be part of our community, and also build your brand. That's super important. You can control the narrative of your brand and your startup by posting the right things on LinkedIn, and the right things are aligned to your values. You can build your brand even if you're really a huge startup, right? To say, I care about these values. I'm looking for the CTO. I'm doing this. I'm creating this opportunity for others. Build your brand even from the very beginning. And founders out there, think about your personal brand and the brand of your startup, equally as important, right? Because you might be a startup founder and you're growing this company for 5, 6, 7 years, but your personal brand of you being a founder and you exit and then you come back and build a new startup, amazing. But you always have to be part of building that personal brand. And then usually about 80% of investors, 70 to 80% of angel investors out there are actually entrepreneurs in their former lives. So think about that whole journey of entrepreneur to investor. Number C is connect with your contacts consistently and cultivate a relationship. So connecting with your contacts, meaning that you're networking with people at that event, you're connecting them within your LinkedIn network, and you want to do it consistently. I post a lot on LinkedIn. I am consistently every single day posting because I have so many events, so many things that I'm involved with, which I love. But I'm being very consistent about posting, giving other people credit, taking opportunities to give resources and education to others. That's consistently what I'm trying to do. I have a newsletter that I consistently put out every week, right? And cultivate a relationship. Cultivation of people is hard work. You think it's, oh, like I'm going to connect with this person. No, it's cultivating them that if they have a project, come on in and help them. If you're at a networking event, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm working on an event in a week. You're like, hey, do you need any help? I can be there. I won't just be a person that comes to your event. I can help you. What are you looking for and all that? So cultivating is super important. Number D is deliver above expectations, right? All of us, of course, we don't want to be like, killing ourselves for the expectations, but if you are expecting certain things, deliver over that. And make sure that people understand that you're being very mindful about delivering above expectations. E is engage, evolve, and empathize. So of course, engage, be active, allow people to understand why you're doing it and listening to other people. Evolve. You are not going to be the same person today as you are in a year. So let yourself evolve through networking, getting to know people and all of that. And they're going to see, wow, she or he has come a long way. Evolve because people are feeding into you and giving you feedback and building community. Empathize. Empathize is about listening first, right? And empathizing with others, knowing where they are. F is take a friendly approach. Do you want to be approached by somebody in a networking event that's all grumpy? No, you want to be approached by somebody who's completely friendly, who wants a relationship, who wants to talk to somebody, who's not just like zoning out someplace else or on their phone. Really be friendly. G is set goals. Go for it, show gratitude, and be giving. I always have an example of my setting the goals. I am an entrepreneur and investor. I'm very active in our ecosystem. I also have 3 children and a husband. And when they were littler, my kids, they're now like grown and I can do more networking. I had goals for every networking event that I had and every event I had to go to. Sometimes I actually went to an event for 15 minutes because I had a goal. I said, hey, in this event, I need to meet these 5 people. I came in and they were like right in front of me. I'm like, boom, 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 boom. That was my goal for that networking event. And I went home to be with my children, right? Other times I have to stay there for an hour because my goals are to belong in this community, to be seen and heard and connect with as many people as I can. I give myself the entire event for that. So make sure that you have goals for each and every event that you go to. I know it's a little overkill, but that allows you to be like, yes, that was worth my while because I did these things, or it was not worth my while. I'm not going to go again next year. There's one conference actually that I don't go to anymore because I've gone for 2 years in a row and I never got anything out of it. And my goal the second time was like, find something that you're going to come home with. And I never did. So I don't go back to that event, even if it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. So that's one thing. So H is humor and help go hand in hand. So, being humorous, being friendly, being open, and being helpful, are all parts of being a servant leader in your ecosystem will go really, really far. When somebody says, wow, that person was really friendly and they're kind of quirky or they said some kind of joke, they're going to remember that. Be memorable. I is be interested and have integrity. You probably, yes, I'm taking questions, Joshua. Go ahead. I'm going to stop on this one. You can ask your question. Be interested and have integrity, right? So you've probably been at networking events that you're like, la, 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 you're talking about something, and that person is like not listening to you at all. Do you want to continue that conversation with them? Especially if that person is an investor and they're like, you're not even listening to me. You really want to be very interested and really, show that integrity piece. You're going to follow up with them. You're going to ask them critical questions and stuff like that. So join and get involved. So join into the festivities, join into whatever that event is happening, and get involved in however way you can. K is keep in touch and be kind. So we've kind of talked about that connecting consistently, but keep in touch with them. Maybe sometimes you get connected in a very personal way, like let's say a mom to a mom, or a dad and a dad at a networking event, even though they're like investor, entrepreneur, or two entrepreneurs or two investors, but you really keep in touch with them because of, let's say, a personal connection. That's great. Keep that going and be kind to each other. L is listen and learn from others, keeping an open posture. So listening and learn is super important. You want to be able to listen to others. That's going to increase your empathy. And you're going to learn from others saying, oh my gosh, I didn't know about this. Oh, tell me more about this. You're going to be curious. So you're learning from each other as you're networking. M is motivate yourself. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but motivating yourself allows you to get connected to people on a deeper level so that you do follow up, so that you do deliver above expectations, so that you do connect consistently. So motivate yourself to get excited about networking and connecting with others. And niceness pays. If you're nice, that's the end piece, is that you're nice, you're consistently playing nicely in the ecosystem. People will talk about, wow, this person was always nice. This person always opened up their network. O is ask open-ended questions and take opportunities as they come up. Open-ended questions are really great because then you can get their perspective. You're not being very transactional and saying, what do you think about this? Is angel investing better than VC? And they'll be like, yes. That's all you're going to get. But if you're like, hey, why are you an angel investor and not typically a VC? You're going to get a much better question in that networking event than you are going to go and ask them, well, what do you think, angel or a VC? They're going to be like, angel. You're like, okay, and that's it. I have had great conversations with actually one of my colleagues. She's another angel investor. She's actually built out an angel network, huge angel network, as opposed to creating a fund. Right, which is very typical when somebody is growing their angel network and our angel investors are very prolific. Typically, they open up a fund, and I have great conversations with her every single time that I talk to her because I ask open-ended questions of like, how has it been with the network? What have you found that now that funds are on the up and up? What has been something that you have learned as you're kind of sticking to your guns? And she's like, oh, you remember that I stick to my guns. Awesome. She answers in a very open-ended way, and I can get better connectivity with her. P is professionalism pays, and practice it. So be professional in the questions that you ask, and be careful with bias, right? Everybody has bias, right? So if you do have bias, everybody does, check that bias at the door, neutralize that bias. If you're kind of thinking that way, go and practice how it feels to not be that biased person. So just be professional. Q is ask insightful and meaningful questions after you listen diligently. So, what I find that whenever I'm networking, I sometimes have the busy talk, like, how are you doing? How's the weather? How's it going here? How are the kids, kind of thing. And then you're like really getting into the weeds, and you can ask a really mindful question of saying, wow, you've talked about, the struggles that you've had, like about a year ago. And now it seems like you're doing so much better and you have great traction. What was that kind of turning point for you? They're like, oh my gosh, they're listening. That's a really mindful question. They really love that kind of stuff. Everybody loves to be listened to. So think about as you're listening to somebody in a networking event, how can you put maybe 2 and 2 things together and ask something of with mindfulness, and they're going to come out in a much better way. R is be a resource and share other resources, working trusted relationships. So I know that one of my very dear friends, he was just out here last week in Los Angeles. Every single time I talk to him, no matter, I mean, I talk to him probably every quarter and we're in different events. He's always like, okay, I have a resource here. Oh my gosh, this, that, boom, boom, because he knows everybody. So it's just really great. I know that I'm always going to get value from interacting with this colleague of mine. I love that. I know that I'm always going to be happy. I'm going to feel like I'm valued and I'm going to have some sort of resource at the end of meeting with him. Isn't that great? So even if you're like, oh, should I say that? Should I mention that? I have this resource, mention it. Because it's like, oh, I really already know that. Like, let's say somebody knows, so you're talking to another entrepreneur and they're like, oh, blah, 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 I'm having challenges here. And you're like, oh my gosh, the Brink SBDC has given us so much benefit and value because we've met with advisors and different other people and you should check them out. They're like, oh, I already know the Brink. That's fine. But you're like, hey, have you gone to some of their workshops? Blah, 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 blah. So you can really create that great network of resources for people. S is be strategic and serve others before self. That goes back to that servant leadership. If you're serving others before self, you're actually more aligned to the investor like mindset than an entrepreneur that says, okay, I need funding and I need it yesterday. Right? You turn that on its side and say, how can I serve you as an investor? What are you looking for? Right? If you're looking for ed tech and I'm a CPG consumer product good company, you're like, oh my gosh, I know a really great ed tech company. Do you want me to introduce you to them? And that investor is going to be like, what? You don't want funding? Well, that's interesting, but let me see who is in my network because you're going to do something for me. I would love to do something for you. So think about that serving of others and be strategic as possible, right? Because relationships grow because you're being strategic on how I'm going to grow that network. T is timing is everything and trust is key. I always say trust is, I spell it out as tremendous reciprocity between you and us with sincerity and transparency. That is super important. Trust is the most valuable currency to investors and entrepreneurs. U is understand others with an upbeat demeanor, going back to like being helpful and kind and listening, understanding people and where they are. Sometimes I have not been able to invest in more companies, let's say from 6 months into the year until the end of the year because I'm already allocated. But when an entrepreneur is like, oh my gosh, yeah, I realize that you're fully allocated. Can I just have some strategy sessions with you? I'm like, great, that's awesome. Thank you for understanding where I am as an investor and working alongside me, and I can bring you value in multiple different ways. Other ways is there's a lot of funds that are not fully allocated. They're trying to fundraise at the same time. But if they have this core group of entrepreneurs that say, I'm all aligned to your investment thesis, I will wait for you, that becomes more sticky, right? You understand that investor and you're like, okay, I'll wait, or let's work together in another way. And you never know where that lends up. V is be versatile and valuable. Versatility is important because you're like, okay, I'm networking here, I'm networking there. I need to change here, I need to change there. But that valuable piece is that you're going to show up in a very valuable way. Sharing of value is super important. That's kind of sharing of trust. W is write recommendations, intro emails and posts to champion and uplift all. Entrepreneur and investor in this, right? So entrepreneur, you can actually do recommendations on LinkedIn saying, my gosh, I met this investor at the San Diego Angel Conference event and she or he was amazing, great values alignment, great strategic thinker, and I would love to have them on the cap table. Or an intro email to another entrepreneur that we just talked about. Be an amazing exemplary of your values. You never want to compromise on your values. Set your values straight. And I always say the same values that you have, you should actually be posting on LinkedIn and other places with those values like on your sleeve at all times, right? Yearn, and then Y is yearn for follow-up and the growth of your network. It's your net worth, right? So I also feel whenever an entrepreneur comes up to me and they're very transactional, I don't know what to do with that entrepreneur. But when they're like, oh my gosh, I yearn to grow my network. How can we work together? How can I introduce you to different entrepreneurs? This is my pitch. Can I get some feedback on my pitch? I'm like, yes, of course, let's talk about it. So that's great. And then Z is have a zeal for the possibilities of new and nurtured relationships. So, you're going to have some new relationships. You don't know where that's going to go, but you want to have the zeal that it could be a possibility of something crazy good later on. And then some relationships that you're just nurturing, knowing where that investor is, and nurturing them as you are growing your company. I know, Joshua, you asked for some questions, so just know that I'm up for questions. I have a couple of more slides to allow you to understand where you're going. So I always also say to entrepreneurs before you go into an event, a networking event, you want to map out your investor influencers. It's kind of like a hub and spoke, and you can do this on a white piece of paper. It's super easy. So you'll see that Amy is right here, and she's connected to a lot of different sub hubs, let's say in San Diego and nationwide. So if you do something like this, you know where people are and who can introduce you to the right investor who's part of your investor persona view, right? So, and there's a lot of investors at San Diego Angel Conference event that they might be part of this hub and spoke arena that you can really dive into. Say, hey, you know what? I'm looking to this is Alicia Robb. She's an impact investor. I really want to get introduced to Alicia Robb. Sylvia, can you introduce me? Yes, I'm part of her Next Wave Impact Fund right here. And I can introduce you to her, no problem. Lorraine Pendleton, she's in New York City. She's on the bottom right. She's part of Portfolio. She's part of Golden Seeds, Start Out Investors. If you want to have an introduction to her to Start Out Investors, and you know that Lorraine is part of it, Lorraine is one of my contacts, right? So that's how you can really be very strategic and impactful in how you're going to get in front of different types of investors from just a single networking event like San Diego Angel Conference Fund 6. So I would say it's a focused marketing campaign. Do not use a shotgun approach. Fundraising process is a marketing campaign similar to networking. Build a target list and go for it. What you can ask the investor, right, in a networking environment. You can apply the same approach to screening investors. Is have you invested in your space before? Did they have a successful exit? What do they know about your customers' behavior, needs, and trends? Are they intimately familiar with your competitive landscape? Are they connected with larger investors that can co-invest with them or already syndication partners? All of those are great questions to allow you to understand that investor a little bit deeper and a little bit broader so that you can really level up your networking tactics. Yeah, so this is a little bit about, how you can create your target investor list if you want to go in with a list for the networking event. And this is one way of doing it. How to create a target investor list is identify 3 or more vertical industries and then list potential buyers on a market map. I'll show you market map in a second. Identify key market partners, list companies who have achieved successful exits. Identify the venture capital investors in those deals and identify the angel investors in those deals. And you can do that all in Crunchbase, but this is a really deeper view of, okay, I'm going to show up for this networking event. How can I map this so that I can be as strategic as possible and as successful as possible? So this is what a market map looks like. Typically, let's say the Femtech market map, you can find all of the players in the market that will allow you to say, like, okay, I need to meet somebody who, let's say I'm in general wellness right here. I want to know some of these that are tangential to Femtech because I'm in the Femtech space and I want to have introductions to these. And then I would look up these and say, who are the investors who invested in that company, and then build from there. And then what is basically work the list of investors and work the room. This is a little bit of tools to build your target list, and we can share this on all that later on. Don't take it personal after that networking event. It's, you have your list, you want to work it, and it's a numbers game. It's a funnel. Take it like that, and you want to meet as many people as possible that fit the right criteria for your investor persona. And it's more than art, it's more art than science. So that's why this networking is super important. It's fitting within your values. You want to know how the founder feels about the investor. It's about trust. It's a long relationship. And I'm going to end like this because I want to have enough time for even more questions. The process, understand it. We've gone through a little bit of the process in different areas. The journey is it's a marketing journey. It is your own journey. It's figuring out and identifying investors who are aligned with your investor persona, and then work the room at networking events like we have coming up. And trust, it's the most valuable currency out there. So create it, nurture it, connect with it, and connect those as investors during that event. So with that, I want to take a lot of questions from the audience. Again, we took a really big strategic view of the forest. We went into a couple of the trees that you can do at a networking event and be able to connect with investors on a deeper level. And hopefully you have some questions about this. Don't be shy.
Hey, Sophie, I have some questions. This
Yep.
is Josh. I have a few, but wanted to be obviously cognizant of time and others' questions. But in regarding this specific topic of like, meeting the investors in person, would you advise, two questions on potential like the right conversations to have and things to potentially stay away from during these initial introductions?
Yeah.
One would be, and I think it's a balancing act, but would you advise being, have a certain level of confidence when we're meeting investors, or like honesty when it comes to like, hey, this is where we're at, but I need help in this and this and this and this, or I don't know what I'm doing here,
Yeah.
And in the second question is also kind of on that, is if you already have a business, which I do, and potentially looking to expand or work on other projects involving that, so multiple projects, is that something you would potentially, essentially to boast that you're growing and there's lots of opportunities to work with you as a jockey, as you mentioned? Is that an introduction or something you'd want to like, talk about it first, or maybe a second or third meeting?
Okay, I'm going to take the first question and break that up a little bit. Is that cool?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. So I think one of the pet peeves that I have of, let's say, at a networking event or even a coffee meeting, is that somebody wants to pitch me their company. And they're like, we have something on our iPad and we need to show it to you. I'm like, please don't do that, right? We're at a networking event. We want to just have a great conversation. So I would just highly recommend that you have a conversational way of pitching without your deck, right? And it should be a 30-second pitch of like, this is what we are, because typically some investors are like, what's your 30-second? Right? So you have to be ready for that. And you should not rely on that. Let's say, let me show you my pitch. That's just something that is rarely done. And then the other recommendation I have is to have a humble brag, like established. So a humble brag is typically that you want, like you're saying, like, how do I navigate? Like, do I say that we're so amazing, but we're over here, and stuff like that. So a humble brag is more of like, how do I brag about myself and my company in a very authentic way that allows for that investor to get a little bit of a hook in there and be like, oh, I'm curious about that. You're not over like promising or overdoing where you've been, but you have this humility, you have this like relational piece of it that is really intriguing. We have one of our portfolio companies that actually, we worked a lot on her humble brag, because she led all the time with, I'm a Stanford grad and I'm a serial tech executive. That put off so many investors right off the bat that they didn't even listen to the rest of her pitch, right? So we actually switched it around, saying, you need to have the humility. You have the, not the humility in a bad way, but like say, okay, I am building this company for X reasons. And we have customers that are loving our technology. And the reason why I built it is because I'm a cancer survivor and I have a Stanford degree and I've done tech startups. that allows somebody to be like, oh my gosh, I want to know more, right? Instead of being like backtracking. Then I wanted to also give you an example of, you were saying like, be overly authentic about where you are, and also painting the picture. So I always go back, one of the fund manager for San Diego Angel Conference, Will Fowler. And I love how he starts off some of his educational workshops. He goes, investors want entrepreneurs that say, I am amazing, up in the air, you know, like visionary, I want this and I'm going to change the world. We do want to see that, right? That you have that like passion and drive and dedication to this like larger than life piece, because that's what's going to get you up every single morning, right? But we also need that like realism of where you are. Because if you paint a picture of, oh my gosh, it's amazing, and we have a technology already out there, and you actually don't, that's when there's a red flag. But if you say, oh my gosh, I'm the best thing since sliced bread, oh my gosh, I'm visionary, I want to go here. And where we are is that we have a single prototype. We would love to be at, let's say, 2 prototypes, because this and this and this and this, but we're just right here. That's that realism that investors will be like, oh, I like that. Like, he's being realistic. He's exactly telling me where he's at. So take that snapshot of where you are and make sure that you know it very clearly. You're not saying, you're not inflating it, but you're saying, hey, we have a prototype, or we have an MVP, or we have had some of you guys are really early saying, we have done 100 customer interviews and we're set to really go forwards with an MVP. What? You did 100 interviews? Let's talk about that. And it might not be an investor that goes in now. They might be there a year from now. And your last question, I did not understand what you were mentioning about the last half of your question. Can you rephrase that?
Yeah. So essentially, in your tech example, like if I was launching this product, I have my MVP, we're going great, and we want to add a different service or different technology to it, but it's like,
okay, yeah, I get it. Yeah. So in that aspect, a little bit, and Abraham, thank you for your hand raise, I'll get to you right now, is that that's a little bit of like either pivoting or adding something. Now, I want to the reason why I took those 2, because those are like the most common things that I hear from entrepreneurs of like, hey, we're pivoting because of here, we're looking at services here, or we're pivoting here, or we're adding on a service because of this. And then the other piece of it is, you know, we are transitioning to a different business model because we learned, right? So whatever those things are, again, have that snapshot of where you are, but have the reason why you've done it. So the good reasons are design thinking. We've talked to our customers, even if you've talked to like 5 and you're like, whoa, they're saying something completely different, and we are being receptive and coachable. Therefore, we are redesigning. Those are awesome conversations to have. But if you're saying we're just going to change because we want to add something, then that doesn't really incentivize an investor to be like, oh, they are coachable, they are doing design thinking, they care about their customer, all the good things to actually help scale. Does that make sense? So like, allow yourself if you do want to bring something up like that with an investor, make sure that you have the narrative that supports it.
Understood. Okay, thank
you. Ibrahim.
Great to see you, Sylvia.
I know, as always.
Actually, I have a question, which is, I know this investor, and he was in San Diego, and I kind of, at that time when he listened to my pitch, he really liked my idea, and he said, you are kind of enabling value-based healthcare and all these things. After looking at the technology, it was more like and at that time I didn't have MVP ready, but now I have MVP ready, and I kind of find him in a networking event, and I went to Irvine and met him, and everything went very well. We were connecting very soon, in a matter of a minute or 2 minutes. He recognized me, everything, but I find out that he has invested in last year in one company very similar, or kind of competitor, or but it's not completely same kind of thing. So should I keep connection from the point that he was interested me to give him more update? And he also even suggested that we make a meeting with the CEO of the other company. Should I consider it as a very positive thing from the point how much I should share? Because he said, if you can describe to him how you can make the hospital at home commercialize some product like that, then that CEO would be very, how to say, excited, or would be very happy to have a collaboration. And he said, first we need to have a collaboration before I can have an investment. So what do you think?
Yeah. So a couple of things, and I'm trying to make it a little bit more plain vanilla for everybody else to kind of get some from insight from your question, because the question is really great. Okay, so you went back to an investor, he invested in another company that's similar. He's saying, hey, partner with this company, and then I'll consider. So he's first and foremost, he's actually having a conversation with you. So that's actually really good, right? Because if he's already invested in somebody else and he does not want to continue with you, like we have such limited time as investors, he would not be talking to you. So that's actually really good. He's probably testing, not in a bad way, just testing in general of your coachability, of how you interact with others. So I would go down the path of like having a conversation with the other CEO, and keeping a little bit of a guard, just because you might have intellectual property, they might have intellectual property. So just have a really open-ended conversation with the CEO. Typically investors that see a lot of different technologies in the same space, they are like, oh, we can take a little bit of here and take a little bit here. Why don't they all work together? That is a very like high level, awesome way to look at things. And it's sometimes not like realistic to do it, but just have the conversation no matter what, right? Because there's nothing that negative can go after it. I just would be careful with IP, right?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Mia,
Thank you.
one more question, because we have one more minute. Mia, go ahead.
Hi,
Good to see you.
Sylvia. It's so good to see you. Hi, Amy. So good seeing everybody. Thanks so much. It's such a great, what you call it, webinar. I'm
Workshop.
gonna print out the
Yeah.
ABCDs
Yes.
list and then put it on my desk at the office. The quick question I have is, as you know, like we adapted our business model based on the traction that we gained with the strategic partnership. Initially, we were doing B2B projects, sales, shorter sales cycle, smaller, amount versus the strategic partnership, more lucrative, but as you can imagine, it is longer negotiation time. The question that I have is that, we already have investors on the cap table, and the investors came in with their investment thesis, right? Each investor, some of them are agnostic, industry agnostic, business model agnostic. Some are, okay, I am balancing my portfolio. I want to get 2 to 3x return in 3 or 4 years, and then project sales fit well, versus strategic partnership deals are a bit more, strategic investor approach. So my question, in this case, I'm not sure if it is relevant to other entrepreneurs either. My question is that, especially with the headwinds going on at this time, you kind of need to extend the runway and then really adapt that business model. But existing investor, you know them, you have the relationship with them, and going back to them is great. But the investment thesis with some of them don't align any longer. So how do you strategically approach it? Do you invest more time and find more strategic investor, or do you go back to the existing investors and really, how would you tackle in, this kind of situation when you learn from the, customers, and then you basically adapt the model?
Yeah. I think there's a lot to unpack in that question, right? So one of the things is, I really value cheering, right, of investors. So as with this environment right now, a lot of investors are just reinvesting in their portfolio companies. That is the reality, right? They're not going after that many of the new, maybe like 25% new, 75 their portfolio. So as an entrepreneur, you're like, okay, if I already have those investors already on my cap table, I want to like shepherd and curate them even more, because they will come back and invest, hopefully, in me, or that they're going to seek other co-investors that are aligned strategically, as you were saying. So I would tier those ones at the top of your list of saying, I need to kind of do double take on them. And then the ones that are, and then the second tier would be strategics that are new, but they're really almost attached to you, right? Because again, they're not going to go after somebody who's completely new. They're just not going to do it. Right now, it's just not an environment like that. So you want to keep that tier 1 and tier 2 really tight, right? Even tighter than you had before, even though seems like so much smaller. You're like, oh, you're a little bit scared. That is the trend that's out there, is that people are doubling down on what they know, what they've invested in, and who they know really tangential. And then have your list of other ones and not really touch them. Maybe put them in your investor, newsletter. Sorry, I'm getting tired now. Newsletter. And then like ping them on LinkedIn. Make sure that you're following them so that whenever they ping something, you see it, but it's very like low touch. I would just tier it really a little bit tighter than what you had before. And then the ones that are strategics, I've seen a lot of like partnerships. I'm going up to that top tier because I know that you asked a little bit of that. Is at that top tier, what can they do more with you, right? So have like conversations, coffee conversations, like partnership conversations, transitioning them from just being like, hey, you've been an investor this long, thank you, right? Gratitude, and say, what else can we do within like all of your portfolios, because they're actually doubling down on their portfolios and they know maybe a lot more than you don't even know, right? They've been in closed door conversations. Tap into them just a tiny bit more so that you can extract more information and be that like higher level thinker for them and that partner with them. So that would be my two broad strokes of what I would do.
Thank
Yeah.
you. That's very invaluable also.
Yeah, no problem. Well, we're out of time. Thank you, Mia. Thank you, everybody who was part of this. I talked a lot, but I had a lot to go through. I like that we had wonderful conversations at the end. And I know Amy and Stefan will be sending out the recording and more resources. Anything else to close out, Amy?
No, thank you, Sylvia. Thank you so much for sharing all your insight. I hope everyone found that valuable. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us at the SBDC.
And when is the event? Just making sure that everybody knows.
Okay, and the San Diego Angel Conference is Thursday, May 9th. The SDAngels.com. You can find the registration link. So we hope to see you there. And like I said, if you have any questions for us, please reach out to me and Stephen at the Brink, and we'll be happy to help field your questions and contact you to the resources. Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.